Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and there is a chaotic situation forming in Puerto Rico, and we are going to talk a bit about that. So John, can you start us off by letting us know what's going on?
Yeah, so what's going on in Puerto Rico is they're bankrupt. They don't have any money to pay their creditors that they borrowed a whole bunch of money. They did tons of deficit spending, which they've done, here in Canada. We're infamous for it now. And everybody else in the world, governments seem to believe that they could actually spend money out of thin air. And then just, have some taxes, but then spend a whole bunch of more money that they don't have. And this is like really destroying our countries around the world, because what is happening is you're spending money that you would never be able to pay back. And there was actually, I looked at something interesting about the US dollar just recently, and if they were to pay down the debt over the next 8 years, they would have to reduce government spending by 91%.
Which isn't going to happen.
No, of course not. So it's inevitable that all of these countries are going to go bankrupt now. I'm reading from an article from Seeking Alpha. It's Wall Street News, online news source, and they talk about how the public bond, the bankruptcies of public bond issuing entities such as Orange County, California, Jefferson County, Alabama, and the city of Detroit, Michigan, are still rare events, but they exert a lot of influence, in part because they demonstrate the possibility of which isn't supposed to be possible. So none of these, big state-run entities like cities or counties or RMs, or if it's provinces, whatever, they're not supposed to go bankrupt, they say, because they're always supposed to be able to spend money. The problem is they've been spending too much money, and their creditors wants to ask for their money back. In the case with Puerto Rico was on May the 2nd this year. Last year, sorry. They missed the payment of $422 million. And that's how it all started. And now there's the 1st of July, which is just have passed, was a $2 billion payment that was coming due there. And it seems like they also will not be able to make that happen. And there's a lot of corruption issues right now in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of these government workers that just siphon off money, and so on. There's been the teachers unions and other government-run entities that have just stolen money from the public, their tax money, because they know that they're not going to be able to. They're going to be able to get away with all this.
Well, and I know a lot of Americans are hurting from this, considering the fact that I've seen a lot of stuff out there about potentially bailing out and, basically emptying people's accounts. And a lot of people have a lot of money in Puerto Rico, right?
Well, there's lots of money, in Puerto Rico. There's a decent amount there. I don't know the exact amounts in the bank accounts, but of course, there's going to be two risks coming up now. There's, of course, going to be the bailout risk, where they just take the taxpayers' money, which they barely can pay for services with that tax income. Now, what are they going to do when they have to bail out a whole bunch of money? Well, they're not going to be able to pay for all their services. So there's certain bankruptcy, like they're just destroying their whole state of economy. Like right now, well, as October 2013, they had $191 billion in debt, and the debt to GDP ratio was 160%. So they're totally destroying their whole economy, and their worker participation rate is 40.5%, Josh, which shows you that there's very little people working over in.
Absolutely.
In Puerto Rico and living off of the states, probably a lot of them, and that's how they need to constantly borrow money, and it's just a black hole of debt that everybody is getting into, and there's not enough money in the world. Like, these Keynesians believe that they could print money out of thin air to save themselves. Well, we've seen with everything happening around in Europe right now, about 15% of all the global bonds right now are in negative yield, so in negative interest rate, which is totally ridiculous. It's so unsustainable that we're gonna crash this whole economy. And Puerto Rico and Greece are very similar. I want to draw that line as well, where they can't really print money out of thin air the way, you know, the Fed can or the Bank of Canada can.
Shouldn't, but can,
Yeah, exactly. So they're stuck in a limbo because they can't do that, so they're gonna have to get bailed out by someone. And of course, like we've seen in Greece, the bailouts go directly back to the bankers that they owe money. It doesn't go to them because, first of all, they don't have that money to pay back anyways. So it's just to keep the banking system alive, and it's gonna falter very soon. The whole system is unsustainable, as I said. And
it's the epitome of unsustainable, and the point I always try to make in all of our videos is that all paper money eventually reverts to its natural value of zero. The money that you put in a bank account is not yours, it's a bank's, and that the fact that government keeps trying to get involved in the markets to the extent where they manipulate and create monopolies, and then we see these horrible effects on nations' economies, and of course we see that all across the world right now. It's a global issue, and the globalists are really trying to push their central banking schemes on every single individual on the planet, and it's easy to control a whole bunch of debt slaves because what can you do, right? And I try to shove that into every video because it's so important to know about, because it is affecting, this is eventually going to come down on every single individual. You might not live in Puerto Rico, you might not live in Venezuela, you might not live in Greece, Angola, Zimbabwe, all these countries, you might live in Canada or the United States, but it's eventually going to come down on all of us, and it's up to us to really have an understanding of what the monetary system is, what it does, how it enslaves us, as your book points out, John, and just to try and get people aware of these things, because the monetary system is incredibly important to us as individuals and to how we survive, and yet very few people actually know about it or are willing to spend the time looking into it. They just repeat TV talking points that they think they know about, but it's really just propaganda.
But there's actually somebody having a plan to fix the Puerto Rico debt crises. Well, his name is Bernie Sanders, and I'll tell you quickly what his plan is. Bernie Sanders is proposing that the island's political class, the very people who spent all the money, previous money, and ran up those unpayable debts, should be put back in charge to clean up the mess. There you go, Josh. What a fantastic solution.
You know, problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialect, just repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And this is the kind of mentality that a lot of people have, because it's just easier to just repeat these talking points instead of actually learn about things, because it's made complicated on purpose.
Well, just put the same stupid idiot politicians that racked up the debt and destroyed the country in the first place. Just back, you know, you guys could fix it. Of course you can fix it because you made the mess, so you must be able to fix that problem. I'm sick and tired of politicians destroying our world with their belief that they could just promise and promise and promise things, and they don't even have the money for it today. Like, look at Manitoba, Newfoundland and Labrador, and other places around here in Canada. They just don't simply have the money anymore, and they just promise and then, you know, give the money away, but they borrow that money out of thin air that they don't have, and it's unsustainable. It's like us would be, you know, going and racking up debt on a credit card. Well, suddenly we max that credit card out. Well, okay, well, I'm just going to go and get a new credit card to pay that one off. And it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle, and they're using people's gullible reactions to these stories, and using people's emotions to implement further debt enslavement and further problems with the monetary system. Now, John, just going forward quickly, can you let us know what do you see happening going forward 5 years in Puerto Rico, and what do you think they need to do to get out of this mess?
I don't think they're even going to have the US dollar anymore 5 years from now, to be honest with you. Especially in the state that it's in right now with a fiat paper currency
like
system.
99.5% devalued or something crazy like that.
People of Puerto Rico has to become sustainable again. This has been a problem with the IMF borrowing money and then you know, shipping out a lot of their production, and they used to be, you know, more self-sustainable economies where they produced a lot of commodities themselves and so on, and and they become just shells right now, where they just live off of exports coming in, and they
Absolutely.
don't have anything produced themselves. So I think my message to Puerto Rico is to just start looking at what can you do yourself to sustain your economy, and having to live less and less at least as possible from the tit of the government, or by just being able to produce the things you need yourself.
Yeah, be responsible, free the markets, bring it down to the individual, and nothing is more mathematically correct than demand. Supply, demand, doing things yourself. Look at,
thing.
It's a magical thing, and the only place we really see free markets, or what they call, like what real capitalism is, the only places we see that anymore are like flea markets and garage sales and farmers markets. They don't actually exist. What we see today is corporatism, corporate fascism, and we need to get out of that system. So thank you very much, John, for going over this important issue. I'm sure the people of Puerto Rico will benefit from this information. And of course, it is our opinion, because legally we have to say that, because the stupid government has to get involved in everything. But outside of that, please check the links below. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and of course at worldalternativemedia.com. You can donate below at the GoFundMe and the Patreon. We can't do this stuff without you, because we are basically just doing this free of charge in order to give you guys the kind of information to keep yourselves and your family safe, by your own responsibility, folks, to keep yourselves safe in the event and the inevitable event of the financial collapse, a global collapse. We think that it's so important that we all as individuals learn about these things and keep ourselves and our families safe. So thank you, John. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Thank you.